Greetings my guzzlers. I'm on my stay puff tonight. Well actually I've had a couple of coochies but I won't tell you about them. So I think it's time to have a stay puffed. So this is a Welsh beer, as I've told you before, and tonight I'm eating alone. The wife's already eaten, can't possibly eat another meal. So I'm going to make myself something that I quite like. And I have made this before as just a side dish. I'm making this as a main dish, and I'm making it differently to how I made it before. But let me have a swig. Perfection. I'm making cauliflower cheese, a British classic dish. And not only is it a classic dish, it can be a side dish, it can be a main dish. I'm having it as main dish. She might regret it later, letting me have cauliflower and stay puffed and cooch. But anyway, tonight, classic cauliflower cheese. Bit of twist. So I said to the wife, buy me a cauliflower. So she bought me the smallest one. I know it's just for me. But first thing we're going to do is trim it. So we want to cut off these leaves, because we don't want the leaves. What we're after is the individual little florets. Okay, now I said to you it's a classic British dish. But the cauliflower isn't native to Britain. Okay, and in fact it's quite possible that actually, although it is a British classic today, that it probably wasn't originally from Britain. And I've already told you, you know, we Brits, we have our cauliflower cheese, sometimes a side dish, traditionally with stuff like a roast dinner or a gammon, but equally we'll have cauliflower cheese just as a main dish. It can have mustard in it, it can have a bit of nutmeg in it, but of course what it always has is cheese, and generally a mature like cheddar. Now we're going to be using a mature cheddar, and I've got about 120, 130 grams of that grated, but I'm going to add a little bit of colour to it because I want to be a bit more colourful. I've been on a cooking course today, I might tell you about that another time, but it was very colourful in many ways. So we're adding some red Leicester. I've got about 30, 40-ish grams of red Leicester grated. You're going to want some flour because we're going to make a cheese sauce. So you want some flour, just ordinary plain flour. I've got 40 grams of that. I've got 40 grams of butter, and I've got 600 mils of milk. But I've also got some Parmesan. I don't know, I think it was about 30 grams of Parmesan, and I've got some Panko breadcrumbs. Now you don't have to use Panko, you can just use ordinary breadcrumbs. You want about 100 grams. So I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to cut that into the little florets. You don't know what that, do you? Or shall I make you? Cut off all the cut the florets all off, and I'm going to put them in this pan. And I've tried to make them about even, but obviously there's small bits, but you can't help that. And I'm just gonna, I boiled some water just to speed things up. And I'm pouring this boiling water over the top of the florets, spilling some over the oven. And then I'm just gonna put that on. Oh yeah. And we're gonna give it generous pinch of salt, about half a teaspoonish. Okay. And then we're going to bring that to the boil, and we're going to boil that for up to 10 minutes. Now, it depends how mushy you like your cauliflower cheese. If you want a bit of bite to it, obviously don't cook it for so long. If you don't like it crunchy, cook it for longer. Alright? So it's up to you. So up to about 10 minutes, so I'll just wait till that comes to the boil and I'll put a timer on. So I was saying to you about the origin of cauliflower. Cauliflower comes from Cyprus. Well, that's pretty much certain. from a place called Cauliflower, or Cauliflower, I don't know, but Cyprus anyway. And it came from there. That mark on there, come off, dirty mark on me workbench, stuck. And at that time, Cyprus was a British colony, and bechamel sauce, which is essentially what we're going to make, a white sauce, was actually used quite a lot in Greece and Cypriot cooking, going back to the 19th century. So the sauce was something that came from Cyprus. The cauliflower itself came from Cyprus. Excuse me. And it's believed that the cauliflower was introduced, or rather cauliflower cheese was introduced by the sort of Anglo-Cypriots, if you like. But it was actually the French, when they ruled Cyprus, who apparently introduced the actual cauliflower to England. And the French, or the old French word for cauliflower, because I believe the present word is chou-fleur, the old word was chou de Cypre, i.e. Cyprus cabbage. So, there you go. That's pretty much history. So, like I say, I'm just going to bring that to the boil. When it is, I'm moving that, because once that's boiled that 10 minutes, we'll make the sauce. Now, in the meantime, I've put my oven on about 180-ish. I put a dish in, I'm going to cook this in a dish, but I've put like a baking sheet in there just in case it boils over. My oven's enough of a mess without making any more. Actually, thinking about it, it's because last time at Christmas I put like a oven-ready cauliflower cheese to have Christmas dinner in there, but because I was trying to stack everything else in there, when I can pull it out, I thought, where's my cauliflower cheese gone? And it welded itself to the back of the oven, and it was melting and it was going everywhere, and it made a right bloody mess. We don't want that again. So, not that you're aware, there's a little interlude there. See, the gin's changed colour. Wife decided she's not on the mermaid gin. That's another subject we'll get at. It's really nice, that gin. She's on a Wheatley Neal pink grapefruit gin. So she came in, interrupted my flow to make herself a pink grapefruit gin. Then I had to wait while she got the ice out, while she got the tonic out, while she got rid of it all. Anyway, that's boiling. It's had about 5 minutes. So now we're going to put a pan on there, and I'm going to put 40 grams of butter in there, and we're going to melt it down. Now, to make a bechamel sauce, but it's basically butter and flour and milk. Basically, we're making a white sauce, a white roux. So I was saying to you about the cauliflower and cauliflower cheese, and I've said to you numerous times now, in Britain here we have it as a side dish. We can flavour it with mustard, we can flavour nutmeg. I told you this before. And actually now, it's quite often served up as a vegetarian meal. You probably get vegan versions, but obviously if it's got butter in it, and it's got milk in it, and it's got cheese in it, it's not strictly speaking vegan. Well, it's not vegan, is it? But I should gather there's probably vegan versions of it. And also, it is quite a common baby food. Not sure I fancy cauliflower in one of them little baby food tins. So what we're going to do is we're going to melt down our butter like that there, and then I'm going to add that flour. And just looking at the time, what we're going to do is we're just going to heat that gently, and we're going to cook off that flour, mixing it into the milk. I'm using a spatula here, and you know, it'll go like a paste. Okay, so like I say, we cook that for about a minute. Okay, helps cook out the flour a little bit, helps it get absorb the butter. Okay, now if your cauliflower gets ready and we're not quite ready with the sauce, we'll be draining it anyway, so it'll be coming off the heat. So that's it. So one more final little bit to tell you about cauliflower cheese, but I'm just going to get this done for about a minute, not quite there yet, and then we'll start turning it into a sauce. Right, the cauliflower's done, so I've just removed my flour and butter mix off the heat for a minute, and I'm just going to shove that through a colander, and we're just going to let that drain so that we can concentrate back on this. Now at this point you might want to switch to a whisk, it's up to you, because what we want to create is a non-lumpy white sauce. So to do that, you gradually add in your milk, a little bit at a time. Once you've got it sort of, don't you dare make a bloody mess and fall over, don't you dare. You can sort of add it in bigger amounts, but to begin with you want to add a little bit at a time, keep mixing it in, and like I say, if you find it easier with a whisk, I'm going to do it with a spatula. It's quite a nice little flexible spatula. Do it with a wooden spoon. A lot of people swear and do it with a wooden spoon, so you've got to do it with a wooden spoon. It's the only way to get your lumps out. Not strictly true, but there you go. This is working just fine. So, I told you there's like 600 mils of milk there. So we just essentially keep adding it in. And like I say, once this has actually got a little bit more thinner, you'll find you can add larger amounts of milk. But slow and steady, as the saying goes, is best if you want to avoid lumps. Okay, and there you go. I've got a few odd little lumps, but it's not really lumps because I just haven't mixed it in properly. And there you go. Give it a couple of swirls. Lumps gone. Okay, so I'm going to get all that milk in there, and then I'll have a little drink. I mean, it just looks like milk, a bit of a murky milk. So I can just sling in the rest of that milk. Okay, sling it all over the bloody place, you messy git you. And all we want to do is keep on stirring it, because you don't want it catching on the bottom. Don't want your bottom caught. Exactly the centre of the mission. Now, if you had switched to a whisk for this bit, you're now creating some washing up, because we're now going back to the spatula or spoon, because once this has come up to like a simmer, we're going to add in our cheeses. And so you don't have to have mixed cheeses. It's quite often a mature cheddar if you don't like mature cheddar. I must admit, I don't really like mature cheddar in sandwiches. I'm much more a milder cheddar in sandwiches, mainly because I find mature cheddar almost gritty. I don't know, anyway. So we'll just keep that sort of moving, as it were. Make sure we go all over the bottom. Keep scraping the bottom all over. Because we don't want to catch, and like I say, we want to bring that up to a simmer. Some people at that point advocate turning the heat off when we melt the cheese into it. Some just keep their eye on it and melt it into it. So I'll say there was one more little bit to tell you about history. 1861, Mrs. Beeton produced her book on household management, etc., and cooking. And in there she mentions cauliflower and Parmesan cheese. So there is actually a recipe dating back to 1861. But like I say, probably originated before then, well before then, who knows. And there you go, that's your entire history of cauliflower cheese. Not that most exciting, but then again, you might argue it's not the most exciting of dishes. Now, I've mentioned all these other accompaniments. We're not putting anything else in this other than our cheeses. Okay, well, into the sauce anyway. So I've got my cheeses ready. My Parmesan is a finishing touch, as is my Panko. My oven is now up to 180-ish. My oven's a bit tempting. So I'm just going to bring this up to a simmer. get yourself a nice Stay Puft. I've only had one Stay Puft, you know. I'm not telling you how many cookies I've had before, but I've only had one Stay Puft. Promise you, only one. I'm not counting the Stay Puffs. Oh, never mind. Still waiting for this to come up to the boil. Now, I've turned the heat up. If you turn the heat up, that's fine, but just be careful, don't catch on the bottom. Okay, because what you'll find starts to happen is it cooks on the bottom. You know, the flour starts sort of thickening and it'll sit on the bottom and then it can catch. So you need to just make sure, if you want to turn the heat up, speed things up, fine. Just make sure you keep scraping your bottom. Okay. So, very simple dish. Nothing else to tell you. Try to do a search, find out interesting facts, and all I come up with is them same things I kept telling you over and over. Stay Puft. Tiny Rebel's 11th birthday. Gave me 20% off an order for their birthday. That's hence why I bought some more. What else can I tell you? I've been on a macaron. Cookery course today. Quite cracked me macarons yet. No, it's got bugger all to do with this, but I'm just telling you. I sort of get one thing cracked, like, oh, what's the oven temperature meant to be? Oh, got that sorted. Oh, why does it look like that? Oh, because I've undermixed it. I've done whatever. So I went on a course day. Perfect macarons. So I'm going to have to do another attempt at macarons, and I'll attempt that. And for that, I've got to thank Marianne. Well, assuming no works when I do it in my own kitchen. Marianne of Crow Kitchen. Had a great day today. Had a nice little sort of afternoon tea. She supplied champagne, but I was driving, so I had the non-alcoholic version. I have to say, some of the other ladies with their I was the only bloke there. They're all ladies. Some of the other ladies did partake in the actual champagne. But anyway, that's an aside. I'm just killing time at the minute because this is boring. Should have a little bit of background music, shouldn't I? Come in a stew. So it's almost there at the simmering stage. Okay, so I'm keeping it moving for now. And I'm going to be making it in this pie dish, as it were. Okay, so what we want to do is transfer our florets over to the pie dish. Now, if you're going to make your sauce, and then you're going to sort of like want to wait a little bit while you get the rest of it together, then cover it over once you've got the cheese melted into it. But hopefully I can get it all done quite quickly. So what? Oh, I was doing that. I never used to. I'm just going to turn that heat down a little bit. Keep that moving, and we're going to take our florets and we're just going to put them into our dish, and we want the fluffy side, as it were, the nice bits to the top. So put your florets in. Make sure you keep stirring your sauce. Okay, and actually I'm just going to toss that in there, just so I get it out of your way, and then we'll just arrange it. Now obviously, I mean, you could do this in individual dishes if you wanted, you know, per serving, or you can do it in one big one like I'm doing. Probably end up eating all of this. So, that cauliflower doesn't quite cover everything, but that's fine. Okay, so that's ready to go. Now, you could, at this point, carefully taste this and see if you want to add a little bit of salt. I'm not bothered. Too much salt's bad for you. I know the what's names will say you have to put salt in things because otherwise you didn't bring out the proper seasoning and the flavours. But but my view is we can always add extra salt at the end. Not everybody likes a lot of salt in it. And at the end of the day, prime flavouring this cheese. So that's just come up to the simmer now. So in goes me red Leicester, if it decides to come out of there. In goes our mature English cheddar, again if it decides to tip out of there. And what we're going to do is we're now just going to mix that through until it's all melted. And then we are essentially ready to assemble our final dish. Okay, I'll put the heat on low. Like I say, some people say you don't really need to bother, you could just turn it off at this stage because the sauce is hot enough. And in fact, I might just turn it off in a second because most of that cheese appears to have melted. So there's my dish of cauliflower. Here's my cheese sauce. Now, I said to you about adding red Leicester to give it a bit of a colour. It has obviously gone a little bit more yellow. If you would like it more orange, then simply reduce the amount of cheddar and increase the amount of red Leicester. Equally, you don't have to put any red Leicester in at all. Now also, you could, if you wanted, have some red Leicester to go on the topping. I'm not bothering. So, just give it a little bit of a bang, just to make sure them florets are all in there. And actually, I'm just going to submerge some of them florets, because although they're coming to the surface, some of them, I'm just making sure there is at least a coating of sauce over the top. And then we take these Panko breadcrumbs. Like I say, I'm being a bit more exotic, so I'm using Panko. You don't have to, you can use ordinary breadcrumbs, dry breadcrumbs, whatever, breadcrumb. Okay, and I'm just going to spread these all over the top. And our final little touch, to add a little bit of extra kick to it, I'm just sprinkling some Parmesan over top. Now, like I said, if you want an extra little bit of colour, you could put some grated red Leicester on it. I'm not. As far as I'm concerned, there we go. There's my cauliflower cheese. My oven's at about 180-ish. That's now going to go in there, and I'm going to cook that for 25 minutes. So you've got 25 minutes to go away and do what you like. So 25 minutes, you can see, well, I don't know if you can, bubbling away nicely, a little bit of brown on the top. I'll transfer it onto the trivet. The other spoon is in the dishwasher, so I'm using my ladle. So this is going to be fucking hot. So just going to break through that crust. So the sauce is quite runny. There's a lot of milk in this one. In the past, when I've done sort of cheese sauces, I've perhaps made it thicker than this. Not by adding more cheese, but less milk. But anyway, it's been a bit bloody awkward at the minute. So, there we go. So I'm just going to have a little bit tidy up this mess. Let that cool for a fraction, and then we'll taste it. Let's give this a go. Probably burning bloody skin off the top of my mouth. So that was a bit of a mixture of the cheese sauce and the Pankos. Some crunchy on top, some that have obviously soaked a bit. Very cheesy. Well, it would be, wouldn't it, in cheese sauce? But you can get the Parmesan, but the Parmesan isn't overpowering. I'm going to spoon this. Let's try a bit of the old cauliflower. Actually, that's a big bit. You put that down, because that's sliding all over the place and driving me bloody mad. So I've got a bit of cauliflower, I've got a bit of cheese. It looks bloody red hot. That was topping. That was topping. I don't know if there's any cauliflower in this bit. No, up topping. There we go. That is definitely a bit of cauliflower. So that cauliflower still retains a bit of crunch, which is nice. Like I say, if you don't like it like that, let it cook longer in the pan before you put it in there. I'm making a bloody mess everywhere. But like I say, in the past I would have made the sauce thicker, but I think this was from John Kirkwood, I don't know, can't remember, I'll have to look it up. But nice and cheesy. Because I always find cauliflower don't really have any taste to it, does it? I think if you have cauliflower, you've got to have something with it. But there you go, your classic British, probably from Cyprus in the first place, cauliflower cheese. I'm going to end up polishing all that off, I tell you.